Hi. Why am I nervous every time? Hi, welcome to what I've named now as the ROB.GREEN podcast. It might change again. Who knows? I'm just doing what I promised, which is riding with the waves. And this is episode 2. So I guess the seal is broken. This isn't just one of those things that you start and forget about, which I've done before. So I'm really excited to be pressing record. I think that's why I'm feeling a bit nervous, but here we go. I think the first thing that I want to say before we get into this week and get into stuff is thank you so much, everybody who listened to episode 1, who messaged me, commented on the podcast episodes, either on YouTube, on Spotify, or wherever you have been listening to the podcast. I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was hoping that people would listen to it and a couple of people would stream it and maybe comment on it. I don't think I really thought about what people would say about it or what people might choose to connect about. But what came was like really heartfelt stories from people about how they've embraced being more vulnerable at work, for example. How people have embraced being vulnerable with their family, which I think both things are quite big. People talking about grief and have shared so much love and support in reference to me sharing the story about my granddad on the last episode, which I really appreciate. And, it isn't scripted, this episode, as you probably gathered. Last episode wasn't either. So I really didn't know that I was going to talk about him, but it felt relevant, especially in talking about recording the song Don't Look Down for the album. But the stories that came back about people who have family members and people who they love who are unfortunately going through dementia, or as a family, they're sort of navigating that. I just wanted to say thank you for reaching out and sharing your story, whether you commented it or you DM'd me about it. I just voice noted me, especially people in, outside of following me on social media. My own family called me. So I just want to just say off the bat, that wasn't expected, but it was so appreciated and unbelievable. And it actually made me feel like this is a good idea. Doing this is a good idea. So, that might not have been your goal, but it's encouraged me. So if you hate the podcast, it's too late anyway. But yeah, it is nice. And the thing that's on my mind coming into this recording, I've been thinking about it ever since Friday, really, is the Traitors final. And I promise this is related. I'm about to spoil the final episode of the UK Traitors. So if you haven't watched it yet, press pause on this and come back to it after you've watched it, because I'm about to give away the ending. You've been warned. In the Traitors final, it came down to a situation, as we know, where it was 2 traitors versus 2 faithfuls. Rachel and Stephen, who were the traitors, were in a unique situation, or should I say Stephen was in a unique situation, where he could choose to stick by Rachel, his fellow traitor, who he'd had her back, she'd had his back throughout the whole challenge. That's how they'd managed to get all the way to the end as a team, really, acting like a true team. But she was losing faith in the group. So really, Stephen was in a unique position where he could continue to act morally within the game and stick to his teammate, which would result in him having to 50-50 split a £95,000 pot of money. Or at the last moment, he could betray her and walk away with nearly 100 grand's worth of money, and Rachel and everybody else would leave with nothing. And I don't know if this is just me, but when I was watching it, I could see that Rachel was in a position where she kind of didn't have a choice. She had to kind of just put all her eggs in the Stephen basket and hope that he would stay true to the pacts that they'd made. But I could see Stephen was wavering. The way it was edited was certainly made to look like he really wasn't 100% sure what he was going to do. But he seemed very clear on what the moral choice was and what the selfish choice was. And it came to this final moment where he had to reveal whether he'd betrayed Rachel or not. And I don't know, it might have just been me, but my heart was racing. I was like, God, I just kept thinking, please, Stephen, don't. I was like, don't. And I'm being dramatic. maybe, but it felt to me like it was so real. It was so in line with what I feel like in life at the moment, is that it's very easy to take a kind of distancing attitude to whether we think something is right or wrong. I have heard so many times, especially from men, I will say that, being real, is that there's kind of a pride in trying to be neutral, to sort of take emotion away and say, well, if you look at it on paper, it's a game. You know, if he wants to walk away with 95 grand, he's playing the game within the rules. He's not breaking any rules. And I guess I have been feeling a little bit like, just because something doesn't break the rules doesn't make it right, you know? And that was in my head. I was like, Stephen, don't. I was thinking, how is he going to live with himself if he walks away with 95 grand? He knows what Rachel would have spent that money on, you know? Like, I don't know. I don't know, but it's been sticking with me since Friday. It's like when he didn't betray her, when he was stuck to his morals, and the reason he gave was morally it was the right choice, and I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd made any other choice. I cheered. I like jumped out of my chair. I was like, yes! I was so happy. And it just brought me some hope. It may be silly, I don't know, but I just felt like, oh my days, there's hope after all. We're not monsters. We're not monsters. And not that I think that, and it's not, you know, I'm not trying to make a political thing. I'm just saying, like, my days, I was on the edge of my seat, but it made me realize that there is such value in really standing by what you think is good and walking away from what you think is bad. And it's so easy to justify being kind of, you know, neutral, but I don't know if there's any moral merit. Anyway, this week has been a really interesting week because I started reaching out to venues to book the tour. And booking a tour is really complex. It's like logistics, figuring out dates, figuring out fees. You know, there are some artists, they book their shows through promoters, and I do sometimes work with promoters for specific cities. But generally, I'm booking the whole tour, usually with another person on board. But to begin with, before I start working with another person, I just do a bit of a recce and figure out dates and see what kind of venues and think about the project and where the tour is, where the show is going to be best to go to next. And I spend a lot of admin time looking at the sales from the last tour and how tickets moved, when they moved. It's a lot of admin and a lot of statistics work and very polite emails and introducing yourself to venues and people and doing a lot of research. So it's a super laptop heavy week. But as a result of it being super laptop focused, I actually find it like really exciting and really like, oh, you know, this will be really great. Oh, that venue looks gorgeous. And oh, look at their lighting setup. Oh, think of the lights we can do. You know, that's me on one hand. And then on the other hand, I'm like, oh, will it ever end? But it is lovely getting to talk about and think about the show and think about like what's going to be in the show and starting to think about the album and how the album's going to translate into the show, getting dates and availability and the inevitable emails that come back that tell you how much it's going to cost to book these venues. But it's great. And I just want to say, because I know there's a couple of other indie artists that watched episode 1, some who I know and some who I met through the episode, which is about booking venues, and to say that like it's a lot more work, but financially it actually works out better for you to book your own shows sometimes. If you've got a great promoter who's really passionate and can like, you know, sell the venue, and they're a great partner. And most of the time, these are independent promoters. Independent promoters are great at that. I don't necessarily recommend working with a venue as the promoter. And it's not because venues are not good promoters. It's that venues are quite stretched and they have very small staff and they can't give the focus to your event that you would give. So you're often not able to see the return on splitting with them in the way that you would with a promoter. So my advice, if it counts for anything, is to book the venue and promote the event yourself if you can, and if you believe that that's something you can do and that you'll do. Anyway, I started looking at venues, which is like really fun, and started looking at spreadsheets and getting everything together. One of the things that can be a bit hard to keep up during this time is morale. Even though it's exciting to be booking shows and getting things together for yourself, I have to say that it's normally at this time when nothing's happening, when there's not actually any external motion or things to jump into, that to say I think my inner critic comes for me big time, big time. I like to think that I have like three voices in my head. My inner child, who's very free and very creative. My inner, I call him the inner soldier, who's like very hardworking, like will pull an all-nighter, will meet the deadline. It's like, come on, we can do it. Like, inner motivator. And then I have the critic. I think we all have the critic. The critic, man, he's got my number. The inner critic can come for me anytime. And here's the wild thing about the critic is that you never hear the critic's real voice. The critic borrows the voices of people who you love, people who you respect, who you've never met, like other successful artists. They borrow the voices of people who bullied you in high school. They borrowed the voices of anybody they need to. The most effective tool to get you to second guess everything that you do. And it makes me think about an exercise that I got from a PR marketing expert called Amber Horsburgh. Hey, Amber. Amber ran a course through lockdown on Zoom where you could sign up and kind of see her seminars, sort of coaching for independent artists who are managing themselves and doing their own PR around how to do that, basically, to the same level that labels do it. Amber was coming from a background working with some huge labels in the industry and wanted to share the knowledge. And it was really helpful for me. So thank you, Amber. If you ever see this, you're amazing. One of the pieces of advice that Amber gives you is to write out what's called your bleak choir. And your bleak choir is all of the people who come to mind and whose voices your inner critic uses when you're approaching a new project or working on a project. When I first sat down to write down these names, I have to admit, I thought I was going to be there for a long time, writing down names, being like, yeah, and this person and this person, this person. When I actually looked at it after doing it, it was like maybe 5 people. And 2 of them were people I've never met, who I respect massively and admire as artists. But I think about quotes from interviews I've seen them in, or really things that I 100% agree with, but if applied to the wrong situation, could derail you entirely. And that's what my critic does, is go, yeah, well, you remember when Beyonce said this one thing this one time that applies to 90% of the stuff you do, but not this 10%. But the critic will use her voice to attack you for the 10%. Anyway, does that make sense? Who knows? But for me, that bleak choir, having that on a sheet of paper sometimes is good, because in weeks like this week where I'm getting to stuff and I start to turn against myself and beat myself up for what I'm doing. Is this person is this really what I think? Is this really how I see it? Or is this the bleak choir? It's honestly a game changer, and it's so small. I totally recommend people do it. The other thing that happened this week that was really heartwarming was I got a message from Phil Pethybridge, who is a person who worked on a bunch of festivals and supports that I did last year and a few years ago before lockdown. And he sent me an email going, oh, I'm just clearing out my space and I've got some of your EPs here. Must have been left at a merch stall or something. I think they're better off with you than they are with me. Can I send them to you? And I was like, yeah, of course. Yeah, send them. And they arrived this week. And I was expecting it to be the Manhood EP, because that is the EP that I've been taking to festivals since lockdown. So he sent it to me and it was this. It was the ROB.GREEN EP. The ROB.GREEN EP, which he must have had from before lockdown, or before the Manhood EP came out, because this was the EP I was taking around with me. I realized when it arrived, I was so shocked to see it, because I've not seen this in person for years, because when the new EP came in, that's what I've been taking around with me. So to like hold the EP in my hand and like look at it was just really sweet. And so I haven't listened to it yet. Maybe that'll be the next podcast. I haven't actually like sat and listened to this EP for a long time. But I realized when I looked at the back that it came out in 2016, which was 10 years ago, which is unbelievable. This EP has such a special place in my heart. And I think its timing arriving back in my life this week is like so perfect, mainly because of how this EP came about. This EP was recorded on zero budget. My friends Stella and Johnny, hey Stells, hey Johnny, we built like a DIY studio in the roof of a church, the Bravery Trust in Bradford, and recorded these tracks. And what I specifically remember about this EP is the song Blue was a song that I wasn't going to put on it, that I thought, oh, I'm not sure about the vibe of it. It's quite heavy. It was probably the most emotionally raw song that I'd ever written. And I remember distinctly Stella being like, babe, you have to put this on the EP. If you don't put this on the EP, it'll be a crying shame. And I was like, okay. We ended up shooting a music video for this in my house with Lace Market Media, hey Matt and Mark, and Joe Dempsey, who is obviously an incredible actor and at the time was working on Game of Thrones. And I wrote the treatment for the music video for Blue and worked on it with Matt, who was the videographer and director of the video. And, we wanted to do this continuous shot video that like showed like the reflections on a breakup and how we reflect on breakups. And, we had this idea of this transforming space and how it worked. And we planned how we were going to do it. We got some of my good friends, Lucy, Ben, and Greg, who was also my manager at the time, to come and like help make this shoot happen in my house, which was so beautiful. It's such a beautiful day. And I remember showing the treatment to Matt. I was like, Joe says he's up for it. I'm wondering who the other actor can be in the video. And Matt said, why can't it be you? And I was so nervous because I had never, even though I'd written about relationships before, I had never kind of talked about on stage or otherwise being gay or my identity, my sexual orientation. And I'd avoided it mainly through fear and old homophobic internalized ideas. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, yeah, I think I could do this. I think this would be really great. And when Joe had said yes, I was like, and I know Joe and I feel like working with him and acting with him will be like a nice bolstering thing. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Really, the whole way that EP and the video unfolded was very natural and organic, very instinctive. It was very following my heart and, this would be a really good treatment. And, I wonder if I'll ask Joe, but he'll probably say no. He's super busy, and he said, yeah. And we got together and we shot this thing in a day. And I remember watching the video back and being like, yeah, this is great. Can't wait to put it out. I had no idea that the video for that song was going to get thousands and thousands of streams. I had no idea that the EP itself would get into the pre-order chart before the video even came out, or that when the EP came out, it would be number 3 in the iTunes R&B chart and number 34 in the iTunes album chart. That, at the time, iTunes charts being like huge, it was not, you don't plan for that. You can't really, especially when you recorded the EP in the roof of a church, your brain doesn't go, this is going to be like the biggest thing I've ever made. But the reason I'm telling that story is to say that in a way, it's a reminder of what happens when you follow your instinct and you stay true to what you believe is right and what you believe is like really good, but also say yes when the thing that's really good requires you to be the bravest that you've ever been. And for me, I was more nervous about the music video coming out than I was about the EP release or anything, because I think it was the first part of me showing something that I knew I would be really seen for, that I wouldn't be able to like hide or lie about or kind of just let people think what they think. It was like I was claiming myself in a way that I hadn't before publicly. And really, it was one of the best creative decisions I've ever made, because it meant I could go on the road. I did like 100 gigs in a single year the following year, which I will never do again because it nearly destroyed me. But it was amazing and, really started momentum for me. In 2017, I was able to become a full-time musician, between musical directing for theatre and recording and performing my own music, which is a huge milestone. So yeah, I am so grateful that this EP came into existence. And the timing of it arriving on my doorstep this week has been quite on the nose, universally speaking. But beautiful. So yeah, it's given me the momentum to go, cool, get the gigs booked. Let's get it going. Follow your heart. It's important. It needs to be done. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. I hope that you have a great week. Maybe I'll be back next week. Who knows? But thank you. And thank you again for all of your comments. Big love to the Evergreens. I should probably say there's now an EverGreens channel on Instagram, something that the Evergreens themselves had been asking me for a few times and encouraging me to do, but I didn't have my head around it. And I still don't have my head around it now, but I'm sharing clips from the studio and like chatting on there. And if you want to join it and keep my morale going while I do funding bids and loads of admin, that would be greatly appreciated. And please keep sharing your stories of encouragement because it's working. So I think that's the end of the episode. I wanted to end by sharing something that I read or heard earlier this week that I wrote down in this book. This is my notebook, which I jokingly refer to as the good book because I just write quotes in it. And they kind of have become like my guiding quotes. Whenever I'm feeling a bit lost or like stuck, I kind of go to the good book, go to this book full of quotes, and sort of look for something to kind of ground me. I'm not a religious person, but I'm very, very spiritual person. And I believe that you should be able to take wisdom from anywhere. I mean, we're surrounded by it, you know, and so to have one place where like, you know, maybe you did read something in your religious text of choice, or maybe something your best friend said to you in a voice note, or, you know, you heard on a podcast or whatever. You want to remember it and you want to be able to go back to it when you need it most. I do that. I write down who it was and where I heard it. And if I wanted to go and hear it from the source, where I would have to go to. So it has like the name of the podcast and the minute count of when they said it or whatever. Anyway, I wanted to share this quote with you because it was one of the things that motivated me to do the episode today when I was talking myself out of it going, yeah, I don't know if I've got anything much to say. And it's this quote. It was Dr. Brené Brown. As I said last week, I'm sort of in the source with all of her stuff at the moment. The quote goes like this: "It's not fear that gets in the way of us being brave with our lives and our work. It's armor. Everybody's afraid. It's okay to be afraid. What's dangerous is the armor that we reach for to self-protect when we're afraid, and how that armor moves us away from love, connection, and our values." Oh, Jesus. That was Dr. Brené Brown on the Diary of a CEO. It's 1 hour and 22 minutes in and 2 seconds. If you want to go and find it, it's a really good interview. It's beautiful. But yeah, I guess that for me is probably bringing together all of the stuff. The EP turning up and alongside watching that Traitors final, it just was highlighting to me like what happens when we're brave and what great things are available to us when we just put ourselves out there and go after what we really believe in, making what we think is right, doing what we think is right, and sticking to our morals when you're never going to regret following your instinct and your heart. And that's a good thing for me to remember. I hope we all remember it. Anyway, see you next time.